Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, under penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Please have a seat, sir.
Thank you.
The microphone in front of you does not amplify, so make sure that you speak loud enough that the jurors all the way to the end can hear, okay?
Yes, sure.
And would you please state your full name?
Christopher Wayne McMillan. CHRISTOPHERWAYNEMCMILLAN.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. McMillan, how you spoke right there is how I need you to keep your voice up during this whole time, correct? You understand?
I'll try.
All right, great. Let's start out with the most obviously thing about, well, there's a couple obvious things, but we'll start out with the one that I think is the most obvious, and that's your sunglasses. Why are you wearing sunglasses in the courtroom today?
Their prescription.
Tell me about this prescription and why you would be required to wear sunglasses.
It takes the halo off of things that I can see clear.
What is wrong with your eyes?
I have a double stigmatism.
And as part of this double stigmatism, if I were to say to you, could you please take off your glasses, would you be able to see me?
No.
And so has this prescription been something that you've had for a long time?
Yes, since I was young.
I'm going to actually show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 1. For the record, Your Honor, these items have also been stipulated to. I guess for the court sees if there's an item that's not stipulated to, I will address it that way.
Thank you.
Going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that picture?
Yes.
What is it that I'm looking at right there?
That is Tasha and myself in sunglasses.
What year is that?
2002.
2002. And those sunglasses look similar to what you're wearing today, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you have that type of prescription back in 2002?
Yes.
Now, next thing that's pretty obvious about you is that you are wearing an orange jumpsuit.
Yes.
You are in prison,
I'm in the Department of Corrections.
which means that you are at a prison.
That's correct.
And you have been brought from that prison today to testify, is that right?
That's correct.
So that we get it right out front, back in 2019, you were charged with open murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and burning a body. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And as a part of a resolution, you actually pled guilty to murder in the second degree, conspiracy to commit murder in the second degree, and you were to receive a minimum sentence of 15 years in prison. Is that right?
Yes.
And you received that for your willingness to be able to come in and testify against other defendants. Is
Yes.
that also correct?
That's correct.
And in reality, is it fair to say that you have actually testified at preliminary examinations as well as trials?
Yes.
You have testified at a preliminary examination in 2019. You testified at a trial in 2021. You testified at a preliminary examination in 2022. Is that all fair to say?
Yes.
Now, those items were actually transcribed, is that right?
Yes.
You know they were transcribed because you have been actually presented with a copy of those transcripts.
Yes, sir.
And on top of that, you actually pled guilty in this courtroom to that murder to and conspiracy to commit murder to. Is that right?
That's correct.
You had a plea at that time where you talked to Judge Cunningham about what happened.
Yes.
And in 2018, you were actually interviewed by Detective Malpe. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
That was actually occurred before you were actually ever arrested. Is that right?
That's correct.
But you've been presented with a copy of that. I gave you a copy of that for you to review before your testimony today. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
And you and I have met, and you and I have prepared as witnesses. Is that also fair to, or prepared for you to be a witness? Is that fair to say as well?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to take you back to 2001. In 2001, did you have occasion to come to Charlotte, Michigan? Or were you already here?
I came in 2001,
Where
November,
did you come from?
Texas,
And where did you come to?
Charlotte.
And did you know someone up here?
My brother lives here in Charlotte.
So your brother lived here in Charlotte, and did you decide to go live with your brother up in Charlotte, Michigan?
Yes, I had an open-ended ticket to fly back to Texas, but I ended up staying and getting a job.
When did you come to Charlotte, Michigan in 2001?
In 2001, it was November the 11th,
And why do you remember that date so specifically?
because it was a couple months after September 11th, and the airports were empty.
Now, after you get up here to Charlotte, you said you got a job.
Yes,
What kind of job did you have?
being a carpenter's helper.
While you were being a carpenter, did something happen to you?
I slipped on some sawdust and slid off a 20-foot roof.
And what happens when you slide off that 20-foot roof?
I compound fractured my right heel and broke my left foot, bulged a couple discs.
After receiving that, did you go on workers' comp?
Yes,
After that incident had happened, did you have occasion to ever meet a person by the name of Deneen Deschamps?
yes.
Could you tell the jury when it was that this occurred?
Early March, late November. I was at a gas station getting gas and cigarettes, and
You just said early March to late November. Is that what you meant?
early March, late February. My bad.
Early March, late February. You were at a gas station. Was
Yes,
that a gas
I-
station here in Charlotte?
Yes.
What happened?
So I could hear that she had a southern drawl. And I was like, I talked to her a little bit and went out to the truck. I went to give her my number, and she was coming out the door to give me her number.
And this is Deneen.
That's Deneen.
Now, after exchanging numbers, do you see her again?
Yes.
And what happens in regards to that?
We met up at a McDonald's. We talked a little bit there. We had some of the same interests. We both liked to smoke pot. So we would go to the park and different places and get high and talk and hang out. Turned into quite regular.
Did there come a point in time that Deneen actually introduced you to her family?
Yes.
Do you remember what street her family lived on?
Horatio.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 2. Do you recognize that picture?
Yes.
What is it that we're looking at in Exhibit 2?
That's the house that I was taken to by Deneen.
Picture that's up on the screen. Is that the house that you went to in 2002?
That's the house.
In all fairness, this picture's taken in like 2015, 2016. Does it look similar as to what
Yes.
you saw in 2002?
Yes.
Now, when you go to this house in 2002, do you have the opportunity to meet Deneen's family?
Yes.
Who exactly did you meet there?
I met Beverly, Robert, Cicely, and Natasha.
Who was Beverly?
Beverly was Deneen's mother.
Now, we might as well just get it done right now. This Beverly, do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Can you tell me where she is sitting, what she is wearing?
She's wearing white glasses and a white shawl at the desk over there.
Your Honor, that's at which desk? Let's be sure that we're clear.
Defendant's desk.
Defendant's desk. Your Honor, I'd ask that the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
The record will reflect the defendant has been recognized.
So the defendant is Deneen's mother. Who's Cicely?
That's Robert and Beverly's daughter.
All right, well, who's Robert?
Robert was the man that was killed.
Now, in reality, in 2002, did you know this individual? Well, I'm going to show you a picture first. I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 3. Do you recognize the photo?
Yes,
Who is that photo of?
that's a picture of Robert.
All right, now, I call him Robert, right? In reality, in 2002, what did you know the person on that picture as?
Juan Cintron.
You knew him as Juan Cintron.
That's the way he was introduced to me.
That's the way he introduced himself to you?
Yes,
So Robert or Juan, the same people, right?
yes,
His daughter is Cicely.
yes.
Who else was actually at the house?
Tasha?
Now, Tasha, was Tasha the same person that we saw in photo 1 that you were standing next to with the sunglasses on?
Yes.
And who was Tasha?
That was Beverly's daughter from another man.
Once again, Beverly being the defendant you've
Yeah.
already identified.
Yes,
So you go over to this house at 334 Horatio. Do you begin hanging out there?
yes.
What exactly would you do when you hung out?
We would play cards, eat, smoke.
Who was
Drink.
we?
Well, it was Deneen, Beverly, myself. Robert didn't really drink. He smoked weed, but he wasn't there a lot.
If Robert was there, do you remember where he liked to be?
He liked to be in the basement.
Why did he like to be in the basement?
That was his little place. He'd go down there and read his Bible, and he'd smoke by himself a lot.
Is it fair to say that when you hung out at the house, you did it a lot of times when Robert wasn't there?
Yes,
Why is that?
he didn't really care for me.
Why didn't he care for you?
He didn't like me being in his place.
Now, it's February or March that you get to know Deneen, and then you start hanging out over the house. Do you remember what time frame this is?
When I'm hanging out at the house,
Yeah.
it was in the spring.
Now, did you ever have the opportunity to go into the basement?
Yes,
What would you do down in the basement?
I would smoke with Deneen or Robert or both of them.
And why would you smoke down there?
They didn't want it going on in the house. Sometimes Deneen and I would smoke in the sunroom. And when Robert wasn't home, just the kids were gone to school, roll up right there at the kitchen table,
But if they were home,
down in the basement or outside or in the sunroom.
so I'm going to get right to it, Chris. Well, let me ask this. Did you become friends with Deneen and the defendant
Yes,
enough that you were hanging out there a lot?
yes.
Did there come a point in time that you had to really hang out there because you had no place else to be?
Yes.
Why is that?
I was on a lot of medications, and I was at my brother's house where I was living. I fell asleep holding a cigarette, and I burned a hole in one of my sister-in-law's dad's blankets. And she went off about it. Her and my brother had words, a big fight, and they kicked me out. So I was going to burn the place down.
So you began hanging out at this Horatio home because that's where you could live.
I was going back and forth from Bellevue to there.
You had a place in Bellevue you could stay as well?
Yeah, at a friend's house.
Now, Chris, I'm going to take you to in 2002. Was there ever a point in time that someone mentioned something to you about taking out Robert?
Yes.
And I'll just ask the question now. Do you know Robert's dead?
Yes.
So let's start with the fact that, well, Do you know the day that he died?
I know it was May the 7th.
Now, in all reality, do you know that it's the date of May 7th because that's what you've seen and heard? Or did you write it down on your calendar?
That's just what I've seen and heard. I didn't know the exact date.
So you don't know the exact date, but do you know the day that he died?
Yes.
Do you know the day he died because you were there?
Yes.
So let's focus off the day he died. Before the day he died, was there a point in time that anyone had a discussion with you in regards to getting rid of Robert?
Deneen.
Tell the jury how that came about.
Robert and Beverly were arguing. Deneen and I were in the sunroom. Can't tell you what they were arguing about because it was arguing in a different language.
Well, let me stop you there. Did Robert and the defendant argue a lot?
Yes.
Verbal arguments?
Physical, verbal.
Physical and verbal.
Yes.
Did you ever see any physical?
I've seen a lot of running mascara.
Running mascara.
Yeah, her makeup would.
That would be on the defendant?
Yes.
Like she was crying.
Yes.
But did you actually ever see any physical altercations between the two?
Never saw them hit each other.
But you heard a lot of yelling.
Yes.
Yelling in a different language.
Yes.
So they're arguing, so what happens?
Deneen told me that they wanted to get rid of him. And
Okay. I'm going to have to stop you these times, and remember, we can't say they. Tell me who they is as you're talking.
Deneen and Beverly wanted to get rid of him because he was abusing the kids and Beverly physically, mentally, sexually. Deneen told me that Beverly wanted to knock him unconscious and suffocate him.
While you're having this conversation with Deneen, does anyone else walk in?
Beverly does.
Beverly, once again, is the person you've identified as the defendant.
Yes.
What exactly does she tell you when she comes in?
She was irate. She wanted to get rid of him. Talked about suffocating him.
And that all takes place during this conversation in the sunroom.
Yes.
How long do you think this conversation took place?
3 to 5 minutes. Wasn't long.
Not very long.
No.
Now you're told that Robert's supposedly abusing the children and the defendant. Have you ever seen any abuse of the children?
No, but they're really skittish.
Skittish, but you didn't know why they would be skittish.
No.
So this conversation takes place. What do you think about it?
I really blew it off. I didn't think much of it at all.
And why is that?
Because they were arguing. I didn't believe, they were actually talking about, Beverly and Deneen were actually talking about murdering somebody.
After that first conversation, do you have another conversation regarding getting rid of Robert?
Yes,
Where does that take place?
in the basement.
Now, who is exactly in the basement with you?
Deneen.
What are you doing?
Smoking.
Smoking what?
Marijuana.
And while you're in the basement, are you told by anyone, hey, this is how we want to kill Robert?
Yes,
Who told you that?
Deneen did.
And what exactly were you told by Deneen?
That Deneen and Beverly wanted me to hit him in the head with a baseball bat and put the bag over his head and suffocate him.
Where exactly were you going to get a baseball bat?
There was a bat in the basement I played with all the time when we went down there. I used to play baseball. So first I'd pick it up, play with it while we were smoking weed.
Aluminum, wooden.
Wooden.
And you said you were in your basement at 3:30, or in the basement at 3:34 Horatio. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 4. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
What is that we're looking at?
that's a diagram of the basement.
Now, in 2002, what might have been different of this sketch than what we're seeing of a sketch that's done after that?
There wasn't a concrete patch there?
There was no concrete patch.
No.
This area, though, you have the area where the victim used to sit. Are you able to see me?
Yes.
Was that concrete?
Yes.
But this area here that's called concrete post wasn't actually there when you're in the basement talking to Deneen in 2002.
Right, there wasn't a concrete patch there. It was concrete, but it ran into dirt.
Concrete that ran into dirt. So tell the jury what you were told was supposed to happen when you killed Robert. What did Deneen say to you?
And she wanted me to stand by the post that's blacked out right there. And when he comes down the stairs, hit him beside the head. When he knocks out, put a bag over his head and hold it with a rope.
So when you say the blacked out post, you're talking right here?
Yes.
Now, what are these? Are those what, stairs?
Yes.
All right. So before we go any further, Chris, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 5. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that we're looking at there?
It's a picture of the basement stairs.
Is that similar to what the basement stairs would have looked like in 2002?
Yes.
I'm going to show you another picture, another exhibit marked Exhibit 6. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that we're looking at?
Another view of the stairs.
Would that be stairs going up from the basement?
Yes.
I'm going to show you a Exhibit 7. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Is that how it would have looked in 2002?
There wasn't a piece of plywood behind the white boards there.
All right, so we have, these are the stairs, would you agree?
Yes.
And there's these white wood coming across them, would you agree with that?
Yes.
But this plywood here wasn't here in
No.
2002. Now, this is the post that you were talking about that you were supposed to stand by?
Yes.
And if you stood by that post, were you able to see up the stairs?
Yes.
Because the plywood wasn't there, right?
That's right.
Showing you what's marked as Exhibit 8. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Is that the bottom of the stairs?
Yes.
If you were to come down those stairs and go to your right, are you coming into that area? That would be where Robert would have sat and where it's marked on the exhibit of concrete patch.
Yes.
Go ahead and hit that. So I'll take you back to Exhibit 4. And you mentioned that you're in the basement, and you mentioned that it's you and Deneen, and you mentioned that you're near the post that's black next to the stairs. Is that right?
Yes.
What does Deneen tell you that she wants done?
That Deneen wants me to hit Robert with a bat.
How is Robert going to get down the stairs?
Beverly was going to have him come down.
So the defendant was going to have him come down the stairs, and once he came down the stairs, what were you supposed to do?
I was supposed to hit him with the bat.
And after he was hit with the bat, what were you told was going to happen?
The bag was going to go on his head, and Deneen and Beverly was going to suffocate him.
Now, while you are in the basement with Deneen talking about this, does the defendant come downstairs?
Briefly.
What does she say?
She just wants to know if we're going over the plan.
She wants to know if you're going over the plan to get rid of Robert.
Yes.
And this is before the day that Robert is actually killed, is that right?
It's 3 days before.
3 days before Robert's, and why do you remember that?
It was about 3 days. We went down there and smoked again. Robert wasn't home.
So Robert wasn't home 3 days later.
Yes.
Where are the kids?
They're at school.
Who's in the house?
Deneen, Beverly, and myself.
So you and Deneen decide to go down and smoke in the basement again.
Yes.
What happens as you're smoking?
The basement door opens. Down comes Robert, and Beverly was behind him. They come down a few steps. Beverly kicked Robert down the stairs. I swung the bat. I hit the post. I broke the bat. He was kind of at his knees. And he wasn't really getting up. He had his hands out like he was going towards Deneen. Deneen was right in front of him. And Beverly starts to tell Deneen, give me the hammer, give me the hammer. Well, Deneen takes the hammer and with her right hand wants to hit him a couple times on the left side of his head. Beverly jerks the hammer away and with her left hand on the left side of the head hits him like 3 or 4 more times until the hammer was in his head. So he was on his knees with the hammer sticking out of his head. I took the hammer, I pulled the hammer out. I'm holding the hammer. There's a hole about $50 size. I turn back around and there's a bag on his head. Deneen's behind him. He's laying on his back with a rope. Deneen was holding the bag. Beverly was sitting up on top of him to keep him from moving. And he laid like that until the bag quit moving in and out and he quit breathing.
Judge, may we approach for a moment?
Okay.
And at this time, we're going to take our morning break. I want to remind you that you are not allowed to talk to each other about the case. You're not allowed to talk to anybody about the case. Please don't let anybody approach you and talk to you. If somebody does approach you, tell them you're a juror and you're not allowed to talk about the case. If they continue, please make sure you report it to me immediately. Also remember your commitment, no looking on social media, any platform of any kind, because there is some media coverage of the case, and I don't want you to inadvertently read or see something. We'll take a break until about 25-2, okay? Thank you very much. Please take the jury out, Ms. Aleka.
All rise for the jury.
Mr. Lloyd, are there any issues that we need to cover outside of the presence of the jury?
Your Honor, just to...
Exhibits 1 through 8 are admitted and have been published to the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor, and Your Honor, we don't whisper, obviously.
Mr. Havis, are there any issues that need to be discussed before, or excuse me, while the jury's out?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Very good. Gentlemen, please be back in the courtroom no later than 25-2. Thank you very much.
All rise.
Have a seat, sir. And I remind you, you are still under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
Very good. Mr. Lloyd.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. McMillan, when we had stopped, you had just talked about that a bag had been placed over Robert's head and a rope around his neck.
Yes.
A couple of things I want to ask you before we continue. You mentioned that you and Deneen did drugs.
Yes.
Was it just you and Deneen, or did the defendant do them as well?
Defended as well.
What kind of drugs were we talking about that y'all were doing together?
Oh, marijuana, cocaine, alcohol.
And this was taking place all before Robert was killed in 2002?
Yes. I was actually buying coke from one of Beverly's friends.
So we get to that day that Robert dies. You mentioned that there was a bat in the basement.
Yes.
That bat in the basement, why was it there?
I don't know why it was down there. I mean, it's just something that I picked up when I saw it. I'd pick it up and start playing with it.
And that bat, that was a bat you played with in the basement?
Yeah. If we went down there and we were going to smoke, I usually had that bat in my hand.
Now, before I take you to Exhibit 9, you mentioned too, well, let's just walk through everything again. You mentioned on the day that Robert died, you were near a post. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, where was the bat?
It was leaned up against the post.
All right, and this post we're talking about is the one that's actually identified as post and is dark on this sketch. Is that right?
Yes.
Because the stairs are actually going from right to left, right being the down portion, left being to this top first floor. Is that right?
Correct.
And you said the bat was left near the post?
Yes.
Is that what you were told to do with the bat?
Yes.
When had you been told to do that?
3 days prior.
That was during the conversation that you had with Deneen about killing Robert.
Yes.
So you said that you're able to look back and see up the stairs.
Yes.
We actually talked about that in one of the exhibits, how the paneling wasn't there at that time in 2002. Is that right?
That's right.
You see Robert begin to come down the stairs. Is that right?
Yes.
You saw the defendant actually kick him down the stairs?
Yes.
What happens when Robert gets kicked down the stairs?
He tumbles down the stairs a little ways, and when he gets to the bottom, he's on his knees. He gets up to his knees. He doesn't actually stand all the way back up.
Now, as he tumbles to the bottom, what do you do?
I swung at that post. I hit the post with a bat.
What did you have in your hands before you swung?
I had the bat in my hand.
You had the bat in your hand.
Yes.
And when Robert came down those stairs, you said you swung at the post. Would that be the black post that's marked here?
Yes.
And what happens to that bat?
It breaks.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 9. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What does that look like to you?
Burnt piece of bat.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 131. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
What is that we're looking at?
it's like a piece of the bat.
Now, this bat was located in the trunk that Robert was found dead in multiple pieces. Just as you see in that picture. Does that bat look like the bat that you broke over that post?
Yes,
So, if we can go back to that sketch, please. So Robert comes down the stairs and he's at the bottom of the stairs. You said he's on his knees, is that right?
that's right.
Ever able to get back to his feet?
Right.
Right mean he did
Yes,
or he did
He
not?
didn't get back to his feet.
He did not. Correct?
That's correct.
Robert starts here at the bottom of the stairs, is that fair to say?
A little bit away from the stairs, yes.
Where does Robert come out towards?
Towards the concrete patch right there.
Where it's marked as concrete patch is where Robert comes to, is that right?
Yes.
Except there is no concrete patch at that time.
Right, it's where the concrete kind of ended and the dirt was right there.
Concrete ended and dirt began. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
What do you observe next occur?
He's on his knees, and Beverly was yelling at Deneen, "Give me the hammer, give me the hammer."
Well, let me stop you there. Beverly was above him when she pushed him down, is
That's
that
right.
right?
That's right.
So at some point she comes down the stairs and ends up behind him,
That's right.
near the stairs themselves.
She's behind Robert.
So Robert's over here by the concrete patch, and the defendant would be over here someplace.
That's right.
Where is Deneen?
In front of Robert.
By the area of the concrete patch.
Yes.
What do you see Deneen do?
She grabbed the hammer and kind of, it didn't really look like she was doing much, but she hit him in the head a couple times with a hammer. And Beverly,
Well, let me stop you. This hammer, had you seen this hammer before?
no,
Had you known it was down there?
no.
This hammer, though, you said, Deneen, you used your right hand motion.
She hit him on the left side of the head with her right hand.
So Robert's facing you, or excuse me, Robert's facing Deneen, meaning that the left side of his head is going to be over here as he's facing, well, over here if I'm Deneen. Is that right?
Yes,
And you say that Deneen strikes him in the head how many times?
a couple times.
And you're observing this.
Yes,
What are you hearing as you're observing Deneen do this?
I'm hearing Beverly yell at Deneen for her to give her the hammer, for Deneen to give Beverly the hammer.
And what happens next?
Beverly takes the hammer from Deneen and with her left hand hits Robert in the left side of the head 3 or 4 more times until it was buried into his skull.
When you're talking about buried into a skull, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 10. What is that we're looking at?
That's a picture of the hammer.
Now, which side?
The round side.
The round side was placed into Robert's, well, was struck into Robert's head. Is that fair to say?
Yes. It was sticking out. The claw part was sticking out there.
Claw part didn't go in the head, the round part went in the head.
That's correct.
Where's Robert at?
He's around the concrete patch.
So at that point, and who has put that hammer in his head?
Beverly.
At that point, what do?
I took the hammer out of his head.
You physically touched that hammer.
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 136. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
What is that we're looking at?
Like a hammer.
Does it look similar to the hammer that is found here?
Yes.
No, this hammer was found outside of the trunk where Robert was burned alive, or was burned. Does that hammer look similar to the one that you pulled out of Robert's head?
Yes.
So now you pulled the hammer out of Robert's head. Is there any blood?
There's a lot of blood.
What's being said at that time?
After the hammer comes out,
Yes.
I don't remember much of anything being said.
But you're seeing things?
Yes. Beverly was sitting on top of Robert. Deneen was holding the rope from behind him. His head was kind of tilted towards his chest, and Deneen had the rope from behind.
Now what type of bag was it?
Like a plastic bag.
Like a grocery bag?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 11. What is that we're looking at?
Picture of the rope.
Does that rope look similar to what you saw being put around his neck?
Yes.
And if I told you that this was the rope that was found around Robert's neck when he was laying in the trunk in Ottawa County, would you say then that was the rope that was used on him?
Yes. It was tied around his head afterwards
Why was it tied around his head?
because there was a lot of blood.
To try to keep the blood in the bag?
Yes.
You mentioned that bag. I'll show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 134. What does that look like to you?
It looks like the bag.
Looks like remnants of a burned up bag.
Yes, it does.
And if you were told that that was the bag that was found on Robert's head, would you say that's the bag that was used around his head?
Yes.
So a bag is placed around his head and a rope is placed around his neck. What do you see happen then?
I can see that he's still breathing. His chest was going up and down and the bag was going in and out.
Deneen is still behind him holding the bag.
Yes.
Defendant is still sitting on his chest.
Yes.
Does there come a point in time that the bag stops moving?
Yes.
How long does that take?
I don't know. It seemed like forever at the time.
So now you got a dead guy in the basement.
Yes.
Deneen, the defendant, and you are all three down there.
Yes.
What do you do next?
We went to the dollar store to get cleaning supplies.
Before you went to the dollar store, did you do anything with your clothes?
Took them off, put them in a bucket
Why did you do that?
because there was blood on the clothes.
There was blood on all three of your clothes,
Yes.
and all three of you changed then?
Yes.
So you then head to the dollar store.
Yes.
Is that here in the city of Charlotte?
Yes.
Do you know where that dollar store was located?
I couldn't tell you by street name.
But you went to a store, and why'd you go to this store?
To get bleach and stuff to clean up.
Whose direction is this that you should go to the store?
Beverly.
What's she telling you that she wants done?
She wants the blood cleaned up.
And so who buys these items?
I don't know who went in the store.
But the three of you went to the store together?
Yes.
And do you get these items?
Yes.
Do you go back to the house?
Yes.
And who then goes and cleans up?
Deneen and Beverly. I didn't go back down there.
You did not go back down there. Why not?
I wasn't gonna clean it up.
Okay, you started to talk quiet.
I wasn't gonna clean it up.
So, is this during the daytime?
Yes.
And you said that Cicely and Tasha aren't there.
That's right.
So that has to, let's say, on a rough average, place it sometime between like 9 and 3. Is that right?
It was between 11 and 1.
11 and 1 is when you killed him?
Yes.
Why do you know it to be during those times?
It was about 11:30 whenever we got back to the house.
When you got back to the house from being at the dollar store.
Yes.
Now, did there come a point in time that day that you left?
Yes. It was at night.
Well, in the afternoon, the girls aren't there.
Right. We
Was
went and
it-
got him. I went and got him from school.
And when you went and got them from school, did you bring them back to the house?
Yes.
What happened when they came back to the house?
They were told to go to their room.
Why were they told to go to their room?
That they were grounded.
Who was telling them that?
Beverly.
Now, when you got back to the house, did you notice anything about the basement door that was different than it had been when you had gone down there in the morning?
There had been a padlock placed on the door.
What do you mean by padlock?
A little lock with the latch. You put the padlock through it and close it.
And that hadn't been there before Robert was killed in the basement?
No.
So now you mentioned too that later on that night you left.
That's right.
Did there come a point in time that you were told to go back down in the basement on the day that you killed Robert?
Yes.
What was the reason for that?
To get the body and bring it upstairs. It was placed in a trunk.
All right, so a trunk. Did you know the body was going to be placed in the trunk?
Yes.
How did you know that?
Because it was sitting next to the bed in the living room. It was kind of like turned into a bedroom, and it was beside the bed.
Whose bedroom was that?
That was Beverly and Robert's bedroom.
And who went and got that trunk?
Beverly pulled it out and got everything out of it, took it downstairs.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 12. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Does that look similar to the trunk that, at least in the shape and design, of what would have been next to the defendant's bed before Robert was killed?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 129. Can you see that?
I can see that.
Does that trunk look similar to what was next to Bev's bed or the defendant's bed in 2002?
Yes.
And if I were to tell you that's the trunk that Robert was found burned up in Ottawa County, would you agree with me that that was the trunk that you had used to carry him out of the basement to Ottawa County?
Yes.
And on that note, you have no idea where you went when you actually did leave, right?
Yeah, I wasn't from here. I've never been more than 40, 50 miles outside of, St. John's was the furthest I've been out of Charlotte.
So when I use Ottawa County,
I had no idea.
you no idea where you actually went.
No.
All right, we'll get to that. So, that trunk that had been next to the defendant's bed is taken down to the basement. When you're called down, what do you see?
I see that Robert's in the trunk.
How do you know that Robert is in that trunk?
Because it wasn't closed all the way. And I lifted the lid up and tried to close it. I couldn't get it closed.
Now, when you go down to that basement, do you see the bat?
No.
How about the hammer that you pulled out of his head?
No.
Did you ever see that bat or hammer ever again?
No.
So you are told to help pick Robert up and take him out of the house.
Yes.
Who tells you to do that?
Beverly.
Once again, it's the defendant telling you what to do, is that right?
Yes.
Who does she tell to do that to?
Deneen and myself.
So Deneen, who is the defendant's daughter, and you then carry Robert out of the basement in that trunk.
Yes.
Where do you carry him to?
We put him in the back of a van that Robert owned.
So you're using Robert's own van to carry him away.
Yes.
Now, what else do you do once you put Robert in the van?
We put a gas can back there
Why'd you put a gas can back there?
because we were going to burn the body.
Who had told you were going to do that?
Beverly.
So at this point, is it daylight or is it nighttime?
It's nighttime.
So does there come a point in time after you put Robert in the van and you've taken the gas can and put it in the van that you decide that, or someone decides it's time to leave?
Yes.
Who decides it's time to leave?
Beverly.
So what do you have to do to get ready to leave?
We had to get the girls in the van.
Now when you say the girls, who are we speaking about?
Cicely and Tasha.
And where are they at?
They were asleep in their bedroom.
And is it nighttime at this time?
Yes.
Who grabs who and puts them in the van?
Deneen put Cicely in the van. I put Tasha in the van.
Do other people get in the van?
Beverly gets in the van.
Defendant gets in the, where did she sit?
In the middle, in the back seat.
How about Deneen?
Deneen was driving.
Where are you?
I'm in the passenger seat.
Why is Deneen driving?
She's the only one that had a valid license.
So out of the three of you, she's the only one with a valid license?
Yes.
What would be the importance of having a valid license?
You get pulled over and have the vehicle searched.
Be pretty bad if you get pulled over for not having a license with the dead body in there. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So Deneen's in the driver's seat, you're in the passenger, the defendant's in the middle, and the children are in there as well as Robert. Do you leave the house at 334 Horatio?
Yes.
Which, by the way, at 334 Horatio House, the defendant and Robert lived in that house, right?
Yes.
How was that house? Was that house just a normal house, or was it a duplex?
It was a duplex. There was the first level with access to the basement, and then there was a second story.
What floor did the defendant live on?
The first level.
The first one that had access to the basement.
Yes.
And somebody else lived up on the second floor?
Yes.
So you go to leave that house. Where's your first stop?
We stopped at a gas station by the highway.
Stop by a gas station by the highway. Do you know what gas station it was?
I couldn't tell you.
What do you do at the gas station?
We get gas in the van and put gas in the little gas can.
And that's the gas can that you've already picked up from the house before you leave.
Yes.
And then what do?
We started driving. We got on the highway.
And we just talked about that. Do you have any idea where you drove to?
No.
Do you have any idea how long you drove?
It was over 45 minutes for sure.
But you don't have a specific time frame as to when that occurred.
No.
Now, did there come a point in time that someone actually told Deneen to stop the van?
To pull off onto a dirt road.
Who's directing you on where to go to these places?
Beverly.
So during this time that you're driving, wherever you're driving to, you're being directed to go there by the defendant?
Yes.
And you said you pulled off a dirt road. Where'd you go after you pulled off the dirt road?
To a little 2-track road.
And what do you mean by 2-track road?
Just where the tires were going was dirt and there was grass in the middle.
What do you do when you get to this 2-track road?
There was a gate at the end of the road, so we backed up to the gate.
Now it's nighttime. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
How do you see this gate?
I didn't see it until we started backing up to it. We was
Okay,
going to pull
but-
in it, and then we had to turn around and back up.
But when you see the gate, what's allowing you to see the gate in the nighttime?
The headlights and the taillights.
So you're actually able to observe the gate.
Yes.
Why is this gate important?
We can't get in the gate.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 13. Now, you talked about a gate.
Yep,
Shown that picture to you before, is that correct?
that's right.
Do you recognize that picture?
Yes.
What does that picture look like to you?
It's a picture of the gate.
That picture looks similar to the gate that you saw when you were bringing Robert to this 2-track road in 2002?
Yes.
So, You said that you drove in and then you turned around and backed up to this 2-track road. Is that right?
That's right.
At that point, what do you do next?
He opened the hatch of the van and pulled Robert out on a cushion or a piece of carpet. And we pulled him up under, Deneen and I pulled him underneath the gate.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 14. Does that item look similar to what you used to pull Robert up the road that day?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 133. This item was found underneath the trunk where Robert was burned. Does this item look familiar to you?
Yes.
Same as Exhibit 14?
Yes.
And did you leave that cushion that you used under Robert when you dragged him up there?
Yes.
So you pull the cushion out of the car and you pull the trunk out. What do you do next?
Deneen and I pulled Robert up the 2-track a little ways and then put him off in the bushes a little bit.
Now that gate that you mentioned, what do you have to do with the gate?
We couldn't get through it. It was locked.
So what'd you do?
So we put the body underneath the pole. It was about knee high.
Because it was that triangle shaped gate.
Right.
You were able to drag it underneath?
Yes.
So you said that you went up the 2-track road. It's you and Deneen pulling it up. And then you said, what did you do when you get to a spot in the 2-track road?
We drug him off the road a little bit.
What did you do then?
We had to go back to the van to get the gas.
What happens when you go back to the van to get the gas?
When we went to the van to get the gas, Beverly wanted a ring off of Robert's hand.
So what do you have to do then?
So we went back out to the body,
Who's we?
Deneen and I.
Go back out to the body. Now, is Robert still inside that trunk?
Yes.
Trunk's pretty much still closed?
Yes.
So what happens when you get back out to Robert in regards to this ring?
Deneen dug around in the trunk and tried to take the ring off his hand.
So, trunk lid has to be open?
Yes.
What do you mean by dug around?
She had to get to his hand to pull the ring off.
Was she able to do that?
No.
Did you try to do it?
No.
So what happens then?
Deneen and I went back to the van. Beverly really wanted the ring, so Beverly and I went back out to the body. Beverly got the ring off his hand.
How'd she do that?
I'm not sure if she spit on the finger or how she did it, but she got it off.
So what happens after that ring is obtained?
We poured gas on the body,
Who poured gas on him?
Beverly and I.
You both poured gas on
She
him?
poured the gas, I lit the fire.
So gas is poured all over Robert. What kind of size gas can is this?
Like a 3-gallon can or so.
You used all that gas over Robert?
Yes, and put the gas can there.
And then what happens next?
When we lit him on fire, we took off up the road.
When you say take off, were you just,
No, we were moving.
you were running?
Yeah.
So where do you run to?
To the van. Beverly gets back in the middle seat. I get back in the passenger seat. Deneen drives off.
What happens? Well, you drive off. Where do you go?
We got back on the highway.
And where are you heading to?
Back to Charlotte.
As you are heading back to Charlotte, does anyone tell you that you need to be throwing something away?
Beverly told us to throw our shoes out the window
What was the reason for that?
for feet print around the van and the body.
So does everybody do that?
Yes.
Everybody being the defendant, you, and Deneen. Is that
Yes.
right? So what happens? Do you end up back at 334 Horatio here in Charlotte?
Yes.
What happens then?
It was getting about daylight. I went in and went to sleep. I went in the extra bedroom, put a chair underneath the doorknob, and I was in there for about 3 hours.
The point that you wake up?
Yes.
What happens after you wake up?
Deneen was still there. Beverly and I went to like a salvage yard and had the tires changed on the van
Why would you go to the salvage yards to change tires?
for the tire tracks leaving the scene.
So you want to remove any, now you don't have any shoes, so nobody can show your feet, and you don't have any tires that can be matched up either. Is that what you're thinking?
That's right.
Does there come a point in time that does there come a point in time that you are directed to go back down to the basement to do further work on
It was a couple days later.
it? And who's telling you to go back to the basement?
Beverly, she wants us to chip the concrete up.
And who's us?
Deneen and myself.
So when you go down to the basement, I'm going to show you what's been marked. Well, we'll start with exhibit. Start with exhibit 15. Do you recognize what we're looking at there?
Yes.
What is it we're looking at?
You can see the concrete patch. You can see the white paint on the post.
That white that is on the post. In 2002, when Robert died, was it there?
No. We painted it on there the day that you're talking about.
All right. Well, it's the day you're talking about. A couple days afterwards, you say you go to the basement.
Deneen and myself.
You're directed to go down there by the defendant. What does the defendant want you to do in that basement?
Cover the blood up.
Why would you need to add paint to those walls or to those posts?
Because there was blood splatter on the post.
I'm going to show you what's marked as People's Exhibit 16. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What are we looking at?
More paint in the concrete patch.
All right, so we know that we're being specific. There is white paint here.
Yes.
There is white paint there. Was that paint there before Robert died?
No.
When you talk about a patch, and I'll show you more as well, we'll show it from this picture. This is concrete right here. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
There is a lighter concrete, kind of slopes down.
Yes.
Would that be what you're calling the patch?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what's marked as People's Exhibit 17. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Where are we at?
That's the concrete patch.
Is that the basement of 334 Horatio?
Yes.
Once again, we're seeing the white paint.
Yes.
Now, you're saying that the white paint that's there is because there was blood?
Yes,
Blood that you could see?
yes.
And so who told you to cover that blood up?
Beverly.
Now, this patch. This patch was not there when Robert was killed in 2002?
No, that's where we chipped the concrete, where it come to the dirt. There was a bunch of blood there. So what we couldn't pick up, we had to cover up.
So the concrete would have ended somewhere in here where the patch starts?
Yeah.
And who chipped up the concrete?
Deneen and myself.
What would you use to chip up the concrete?
A hammer.
Different hammer than the one that was used to kill Robert?
Yes.
And you said you picked up the chip pieces, and what'd you do with them?
Put them in the bucket with the clothes.
So you still have that bucket that has y'all's clothes in it from when you killed Robert?
Yes.
What did you do then?
I mixed up the concrete. Deneen poured it out, or I poured it out, and she smoothed it all down.
So this concrete patch here was actually created by you and Denise
That's right.
to cover up where Robert died.
Yes.
Now, after Robert dies, are you still staying at the Horatio home?
Yes.
Why are you staying there?
I didn't have anywhere else to go.
What begins happening after Robert dies in regards to how long you're going to stay in the Horatio home?
Things are being packed up.
Who's packing up those things?
Beverly and Deneen.
And what are you being told that's going to happen with them packing these things up?
They were going to leave.
Where were they going to leave to?
We're going to go to Jamaica.
Who's we?
Deneen was going to go to Texas. Beverly was going to take Tasha and Cicely and move to Jamaica.
What were you going to do?
I was going to have to find somewhere to go.
So what did you end up decide doing?
I went to Jamaica with Beverly and the kids.
Now, before you leave, do you have the opportunity to hear the defendant actually telling people about why she's having to leave?
Because Robert left her.
She is telling people that Robert left her, and so that's why she'll have to leave.
Yes.
And does there come a point in time that you actually do leave with the defendant to go to Jamaica?
Yes, it was mid to late July.
And how long do you, well, what happens when you go to Jamaica? Who do you stay with down there?
I stayed with Beverly and the kids.
Did there come a point in time that you decided to leave?
I would stay gone a lot. I
Well-
was there for a month and then I had to come back.
Why did you have to come back?
I had a workers' comp I had to go to court and deal with.
Why did you have to stay gone a lot when you were in Jamaica?
I didn't want to be around them.
Didn't want to be around the defendant.
That's right.
So you say that after about a month you had to come back up to Michigan for workers' comp.
Yes.
When you came back up, did you come back up alone?
No, Tasha and Beverly came.
And why is that?
They had to finalize sale on the house, tie up some loose ends, and then they were going to fly back.
Fly back to Jamaica?
Yes.
And this Exhibit 1?
That was taken at a hotel around the airport.
And why was it taken around the hotel at the airport?
Pictures to say bye.
Understand, but had you taken them?
Yes, I was driving them around.
You were driving them around and you actually drove them down to the airport?
Yes.
Whatever happened to Robert's van?
It was sold.
What was it replaced with?
A blue station wagon.
And was that what you were driving around when
Yes.
you took them back down?
Yes.
So after they leave to go back to Jamaica, what do?
I stayed in Michigan about another week, and then I went down to Texas.
come a point in time that you had to come back to Michigan?
Yes.
What year is that?
2007.
Where do you end up when you come back up?
Grand Rapids.
Now, during this time, are you talking to people about this?
No.
Are you thinking about it?
No.
I'm going to take you to 2018.
Yeah.
Knock at your door. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember a couple of detectives being in front of your door?
Yes.
Do you remember them asking you if you had any knowledge of 334 Horatio or the Charlotte area?
Yes, they did.
How many interviews did you have with the detectives regarding this?
3.
When you had that first interview, how do you feel that first interview went?
It was a train wreck.
Why was it a train wreck?
It was the first time I had been talking about it to anybody. And I was spotty all over the place. I was remembering for the first time in a long time. And I never really sat down and thought, if these cops come to my door, what am I going to say? I just never thought about it.
So did you began talking to the officers, the detectives, correct?
Yes.
Through these 3 interviews, is it fair to say that the information that you provided the jury today is what you told them then?
It's a lot. Them 3 interviews, yes.
I'm not going to say over one interview.
Right.
That first interview, as you said, was a train wreck.
That's right.
But through those interviews, that was what you believed had happened back in May of 2002. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Subsequent to that, you were actually charged with the murder of
Yes.
Robert Caraballo. And you've actually pled to the murder of Robert Caraballo.
That's right.
That being charged, though, and that arrest that you received because of it, those 3 interviews had already taken place, right?
Yes.
You had already told the detectives everything about this case before you ever got charged.
Yes.
Is that fair to say? And when you talk to them, like I said, it's the same things that you told us here today. Is that right?
Yes.
Chris, during that time, did you tell the detectives that you were part of killing Robert?
Yes.
Did you tell the detectives that a plan was laid out by Beverly, Deneen, and you heard it to kill Robert?
Yes.
Did you tell the detectives that that plan came to fruition in the basement of 334 Horatio?
Yes.
And did you tell the detectives that it was not only you swinging a bat, but Deneen hitting a hammer, the defendant using a hammer, and a bag and a rope around his head and neck? Is that fair?
Yes.
Subsequent to that, Robert was taken away to a 2-track where he was burned.
Yes.
And all 3 people, you, Deneen, and the defendant, were all there when Robert was killed on May 7, 2002, and burned that night. Is that right?
That's right.
Your Honor, as I previously spoke about the exhibits in this matter were stipulated to, and I would move for the admission of those exhibits. And with that, the people would have no further questions.
Any objection to the exhibits that were discussed and published to the jury since the break being admitted, Mr. Havis?
No objection.
The exhibits are admitted. Cross-examination of the witness. Mr.
Thank you.
Havis?
Mr. McMillan, I want to get a bit of a backstory here to how you came to live at the Rachel Street address. Who invited you to that home, do you recall?
Deneen did.
Now, you mentioned that you don't quite recall how you met Deneen, is that right?
I do remember how I met Deneen.
Okay. How did you meet Deneen?
I met her at a gas station.
Okay.
She was up at the register paying for some gas or cigarettes or whatever she was buying. I noticed she had a southern accent, so we talked a little bit. When I was checking out, I went out to my truck. I wrote my number down, and I was going in to give her my number, and she was coming out the door to give me hers.
Okay. And was it after that first meeting that she invited you back over to the Rachel Street address?
No, it was, we hung out several times before I went to the Horatio address.
How many occasions did you hang out with Deneen before that?
6 or 7.
6 or 7?
She had a condo that she was staying in that belonged to her grandmother.
Okay, she had a condo in Charlotte?
Yes.
It's fair to say that you were impressed with Deneen, correct?
I took a liking to her.
Right. You wanted to date her, right?
Yeah.
You were not able to do so, though, during that period of time. Is that correct?
Nope, she was dancing and she was into girls.
Okay. That didn't deter you, though. You still continued to try to date her.
Well, I was going to be her friend.
Okay. Did there come a time when you actually began to live at the Rachel Street address?
Yes.
When was that?
That was after May the 7th.
I'm sorry?
That was after May the 7th.
Of 2001?
Yes, after the murder.
You had lived there prior to that murder taking place, though, correct?
I was staying in and out between Bellevue and there.
You say you're staying in and out. Give me some type of reference there. Were you there 2 or 3 days a week?
Something like that.
Okay. And where were you sleeping?
I was sleeping in the sunroom.
Were you there? Were you working during that period of time?
No.
Okay. So you were there during the day?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall traffic? Other people may come in and out of the house during the daytime?
Not a whole lot. Beverly had a friend, I believe her name was Mecky, that would come over quite often.
It was what?
Her name was Mecky.
Okay.
It used to come over.
You don't remember 2 or 3 younger girls that would come over for coffee or visits frequently during the week?
No.
Now, prior to staying there on and off, you had met Robert or Juan during that period of time?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated that he introduced himself as being Juan, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a point in time you came to know him as Robert?
Yes.
Okay. And was there an occasion of why he advised you he went by Juan initially rather than Robert?
Immigration. He was Dominican.
Now, Robert worked an awful lot during that period of time, correct?
2 or 3 jobs.
2 or 3 jobs. One was delivering papers,
Yes.
and he worked during the day.
Yes.
Now, there's been obviously a discussion about the basement being Robert's man cave, for more or less. Would that be a good description?
Yes.
if Robert was down in the basement, he didn't like anyone else down there. Is that true?
Unless you were invited.
Unless you're invited. In fact, if he was downstairs and he heard somebody coming downstairs, he would get up and meet them before they got all the way downstairs. Isn't that also correct?
I really don't recall.
Okay. Would you have any reason to disbelieve someone else that may testify towards that?
No.
Now, at the time that you were staying there off and on, there were 2 younger children there. Is that correct?
Yes.
It was Tasha
Yes.
and Cicely.
Yes.
Do you recall their ages at that point in time?
9 and 12, I believe.
Okay. Now, I believe under direct examination, you testified that you never saw any abuse of the children by Juan. Is that correct?
I never saw him hit him.
Okay. Did you ever see him discipline the girls in any way?
Yes.
Okay. Was this like a spanking or something like that?
Just really stern.
Okay. So not corporal punishment, you just
I never saw that.
never saw that at all?
No.
By stern, so he would discipline them with words rather than action.
Yes.
During the time that you were there off and on, how many times do you think you interacted with Juan prior to the day of his death?
I mean, he wasn't just straight rude to me, but I could tell he didn't like me.
Okay.
I mean, interaction was limited to smoking weed with him.
Okay. Well,
It ain't like we just sat around and kicked it together and go downstairs and we talk about him being over in Dominican Republic and we would smoke weed, he would read his Bible.
okay. But this is back in 2001, 2002. It's not like today. So weed is if you're smoking weed with someone, it's a communal activity, wouldn't you
Yeah.
agree with me? You don't smoke weed with someone that you don't get along with.
Right.
Okay. So you two were friendly enough for him to actually, engage in that type of activity.
I just had really good weed.
Okay. Now, were there times when Deneen would join you in the basement to smoke the weed?
Of course.
So it'd be you, Robert, and Deneen, or one? Would you prefer one or Robert?
You just call him Robert.
Okay. There were times when you and Deneen and Robert were down in the basement
Yes.
smoking weed?
Yes.
Now, is it your testimony that my client Beverly would come down and smoke weed with you?
She smoked, but we smoked upstairs
Okay.
when Robert wasn't around.
Okay. So I felt your earlier testimony to a question about smoking downstairs was that Robert didn't like smoking weed upstairs.
That's right.
Okay. But when he wasn't around, you would break that rule and smoke upstairs.
Yes. Sometimes. We did coke on the kitchen table too.
Do you recall what type of job Deneen was doing during this period of time?
She was working at a dealership and she was stripping.
Okay. So she was at a car dealership?
Yes.
Okay. This is a sales position?
Yes.
And the jobs that Robert worked, what do you know of those jobs?
All I knew he did was the paper route. I don't know what he did in the daytime.
Okay. He never talked about that?
No, I never asked. He never brought it up.
Okay. During this period of time when you were off and on at that Horatio Street address, how many times did you talk to Beverly?
I talked to Beverly often.
Okay. Aside from the times that you're saying that you claim that you smoked marijuana with her?
Yes.
Okay.
And she made a lot of dishes with the rice. I remember that.
Okay.
She liked to drink wild Irish rose.
Okay.
We would sit there and drink and cook and
Okay.
conversate.
Was there always plenty of food in the house?
I don't know if you call rice plenty of food, but there was a lot of rice.
Okay. But there's always meals on the table for the kids, right?
Yes.
Did you ever talk with Beverly or Deneen about their personal histories of where they came from, how they wound up in Charlotte?
Only thing Deneen would tell me about her previous life was that was the first time that she got to use her legal name.
Okay. Meaning your last name?
Yes, Ducharme.
Now, this discussion that you had testified to about the decision to kill Robert, you testified that Deneen was the one that raised that subject with you first. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that was in the sunroom?
Yes.
Okay. And that was in the sunroom that you actually stayed at?
That was Deneen's little bedroom. Yeah, but I stayed in there when she wasn't there.
Did Deneen have her own bedroom?
It was in the sunroom. It
Okay.
was made up into a little bedroom.
Okay. So when you say you slept in the sunroom, you're sleeping in Deneen's room?
Yes.
Okay. Were you sleeping in the same bed?
No.
But that was something that you wanted to have happen at some point in time.
One of the first times that Deneen and I went out, we went to the condo and she stripped down on the bed and was showing me some pictures of her naked, and I was rubbing her shoulders, and she was drunk. That's as far as that went, as far as ever being in the same bed.
So it was Deneen's idea to you to kill Robert. She's the one that actually raised the idea with you directly first, correct?
She wanted me to know that her and Beverly were wanting to get rid of him.
Okay. Did she tell you because she suspected Robert was molesting the kids?
Yes.
Did she go into detail about when that took place?
No.
How that took place?
No.
Where that took place?
No.
She just said, he's molesting the kids, so I want to kill him?
She said that they were being physically, mentally, and sexually abused.
By Robert?
Yes.
Okay. And you took that statement at face value?
I took her at her word.
Is it because you were wanting to be boyfriend and girlfriend with Deneen?
I mean, that ain't why I took her at her word.
It would be fair to say that if Deneen asked you to do something, you would do it.
A little bit, but not quite.
Well, I think we're a little bit there about her asking you to kill somebody. You would try to do what Deneen told you to do because you wanted to have a relationship with her. Is that correct?
No, that is not why Robert got killed.
So you decided to kill Robert because you did your own research and found out what she was telling you was true.
I observed around the house how things were. My dad was an alcoholic.
Okay. You just told me that you never saw Robert actually abuse the children or
They were
physically
skittish.
position them.
They were
Sorry?
skittish.
I'm sorry?
They were skittish.
They were skittish.
Yes.
Okay. But you testified earlier that you never saw Robert.
I never saw Robert hit him. I heard him arguing with Beverly. I heard him discipline the kids. I never saw anybody get hit. Beverly always had running mascara, crying all the time.
Okay. So your testimony earlier was that after Deneen raised this issue of killing Robert, your testimony or under direct was that was 2 or 3 days prior to the actual event taking place. Is that
It was a
correct?
week before and then 2 or 3 days before.
Okay, a week before and then 2 or 3
That was
days?
the sunroom.
Okay.
And she advised me that Beverly was wanting to get rid of him.
Okay.
Whenever we were having this conversation, Beverly and Robert were arguing. Beverly comes into the sunroom. She's like, I just can't wait till he's gone. And she asked Deneen if she had told me yet about getting rid of him. And she said
Well,
she
let's-
wanted to
let's-
knock him unconscious and suffocate
Let me
him.
stop you there and answer my question. So Deneen was the one that raised the issue about you
Yes.
killing Robert. Did Deneen tell you how to go about doing that?
That they wanted to Deneen and Beverly wanted to knock him unconscious and suffocate him.
Okay, that's not my question. What did Deneen tell you that she wanted you to do in this regard of killing Robert?
She didn't say anything at that point.
She didn't tell you, I want you to take the bat and hit him?
Not yet.
She didn't say, I want you to take the hammer and hit him?
No.
She didn't say, we're going to use a rope for this?
She said all that in the
Yes or no,
basement
sir?
three days after.
Did she tell you to take the bag and put it over his head?
No, she said
Did
she
say
wanted to
take the rope and
suffocate
strangle
him.
him?
She wanted to hit him unconscious and suffocate him. She
No, I'm
didn't
having
mention
you
using a
just
bat.
yes or no responses.
She didn't mention using.
Mr. McMillan, you need to answer the question that Mr. Havis asked you, okay? So, Mr. Havis, would you please restate your question?
Did she tell you that she wanted you to strangle him with a rope?
No,
Did she tell you that she wanted you to put a bag over his head and suffocate him?
no,
Did she tell you after you killed Robert, the plan was to drive him to Ottawa County,
no,
to dispose of him by lighting him on fire,
no,
to put him in a trunk,
no.
carry him over there? So none of this pre-planning discussion took place. It was just, we want to kill Robert.
Yes.
And you took that as face value if that's what was going to happen.
They wanted to knock him unconscious and suffocate him. That's what I was told.
Okay, but you were never directed yourself for that, is that what you're saying?
Say that again?
You were never directed, that's what they wanted you to do? Or that's not what Deneen wanted you to do?
She was just bringing it up to me that they wanted to get rid of him.
Okay. That was a week prior to his death?
Yes,
And then you said there was another discussion about this 3 days prior to his death?
yes,
Okay. So perhaps I probably didn't phrase this correctly, but so did Deneen tell you the 3 days prior to the event of how they planned on going about getting rid of Robert?
yes,
And during that time, were you directed on using a bat to hit him with?
yes,
Okay. So you were going to use a bat. The bat was in the basement, correct?
yes,
And you were going to hit Robert?
yes,
Okay. Did they tell you what time of the day that was going to be?
no,
Did they tell you what day that was going to be?
no,
Do you recall at a previous testimony you gave, you did not know when this event was going to take place?
that's correct.
And your testimony today is you had no idea when this was going to take place either?
No,
Okay. Did Deneen tell you who was going to use the hammer?
there was no hammer in the plan.
Okay. The plan was a bat,
Yes,
and was the plan including a rope?
yes,
And the plan was including a bag?
yes,
Okay. And the 3 day prior to this, did the plan include putting Robert in a trunk?
yes,
Okay. And was the plan 3 days prior to this to transport Robert to another location
yes.
and to set him on fire?
That wasn't in the plan yet.
Okay, that wasn't part of the plan either.
No.
Okay. Now, you said that during that period of time, Deneen was in a relationship with a female, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. Robert did not know that, is that right?
no,
Robert thought that you were Deneen's boyfriend, correct?
yes,
And that was important for him not to know that, otherwise he would have kicked Deneen out of the house.
that's right.
In any of the businesses or any of the jobs that Robert did Deneen want to help Robert in his jobs?
I don't know.
Never had a discussion about that?
No,
Okay. But you're quite certain that Robert would not have condoned that type of activity by Deneen had he known it?
no.
Okay.
Matter of fact, how she ended up at the house there was the grandmother found out and kicked her out of the condo.
Okay. So that means that she was kicked out of the condo?
Yes,
Okay. And because she'd been kicked out of the condo, she felt that she'd be kicked out of the house if Robert found out?
yes,
Okay. Anywhere from that week to 3 days prior to this event, do you recall you and Deneen being at another gas station that Robert was at?
No,
You don't recall a conversation took place about a week prior to this incident with you, Deneen, and Robert at a gas station?
no,
Now, you testified that, that Robert didn't drink or didn't really drink a lot.
that's right,
You rarely saw him drunk.
that's right.
Okay. What, if anything, were you made aware of about Robert's previous life before he came to the Charlotte address at Ratio?
Said he was, got in trouble with some drugs, did some time in the pen.
Okay. He'd been to prison.
Yes,
Okay. Was he a person to be messed with?
no,
You would not want to start a fight with him?
no.
He was someone who could defend himself.
No, he was somebody that could have somebody else to do it.
Okay. He was someone that could have someone else take care of his business.
That kind of guy.
I'm sorry?
He was that kind of guy.
He was that kind of guy. Okay. Now, on the day of this event, you're saying this happened during the daylight hours, correct?
Yes,
That's your testimony. It didn't happen at night, it happened during the day.
right.
Okay. During that day, who told you to go down the basement?
Nobody.
Okay. So you just knew to go down the basement and lay in wait for Robert?
No, Deneen and I went downstairs to smoke.
You and Deneen went downstairs to smoke.
Yes,
And so when you had no idea, I think you testified once before, that you did not know that the assault on Robert was going to happen on that particular day.
that's right.
It just came out of the blue to you,
That's right.
even though it had been discussed 2 times prior.
Yes,
Okay. Now, we've seen the diagram and some photos of that basement. Would it be fair to say that obviously it's a Michigan basement, right?
yes,
It's kind of damp and cramped as far as space goes.
yes,
Small, poorly lit. Was it poorly lit, sir?
Yes.
Okay. You indicated at one point in time that you were stationed by what was called the black post or the black pillar. Do you recall
Right.
that? That's down at the bottom of the staircase.
yes,
There, as we saw the photographs, there is some type of wood structures on the right-hand side of the staircase as you're going down that obstructs the view to that post. Is that correct?
you talking about the plywood?
Yes. Well, no, not the plywood. The plywood, the photo we saw the plywood, that plywood was not there back in 2002.
That's right.
That was your testimony there. But there was slats that were along that,
The white ones?
the white one,
Yes,
that obstructed the view somewhat of the post.
yes.
Is that why you decided to stand by the post?
That's why Deneen told me to stand there.
So Deneen told you to stand by the post, believing your view would be, or anyone coming down the stairs' view would be obstructed by those slats.
Yes,
So you stood by the post. Okay? Now, I guess I'll back up and say that prior to today, and Mr. Boyd might have asked you this during direct, but you have testified regarding this event several times in the past, correct?
yes,
In fact, you testified at the previous probable cause hearing in this case itself many months ago,
yes,
correct? The small bat that you had, you testified to that you broke that bat when you swung it and hit the post.
that's right.
Is that still your testimony today?
Yes,
Do you recall testifying previously that you intentionally broke the bat?
yes,
And is it your testimony today that you intentionally broke the bat that day?
yes,
So you're testifying today is that you didn't intend to do any harm to Robert that day?
no,
Okay. I know this has been covered, but I want to cover it again. You were subsequently charged with a crime related to Robert's death, correct?
Yes.
And you agreed to take a plea bargain in that case, correct?
Yes.
Your case that you're in prison for right now.
Yes.
Part of that plea bargain were that you were to give truthful testimony against anyone involved in this crime, correct?
Yes.
And that was part of the sentence agreement connected with your plea bargain, correct?
That's right.
And the sentencing agreement is that you agreed to a minimum sentence of 15 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections.
Yes.
Now, had you been convicted of the count that was dismissed, that would have been potentially life in prison,
Yes.
what you were charged with.
Yes.
So instead of that, you took a plea bargain of 15 years.
Yes.
Do you recall, well, do you recall what you testified to at your plea hearing, sir,
Yes.
regarding this incident?
Yes.
During that time, did you testify that you broke the bat intentionally?
I believe I told him that I swung the bat and broke it.
Okay. It's a little bit different than doing it intentionally. Now, your testimony is that you believe Beverly pushed Robert down the stairs.
Yes.
Okay. So from where you were standing at the post, you could not see that, correct?
I could see up the stairs.
Those slats were in the way. That's why you were standing there. That's where Deneen told you to stand, because your view would be obstructed.
Whenever the door opened, I looked down there and saw.
Okay. So your testimony is that Robert fell down the stairs, correct?
He was pushed down the stairs.
Okay. He landed at the bottom of the stairs on the floor of the basement.
Yes.
Was he flat on the basement floor?
It's kind of on his side. He got up to his knees.
Okay. You had testified at a previous hearing that he was on his knees.
Yes.
Is that a more accurate statement?
Yes.
So he's on his knees. Okay. His back is towards the staircase, correct?
Yes.
So he has an unobstructed view of everything in front of him.
Yep.
You're standing to his right behind the post, correct?
Yes.
And you swing the bat
As he was coming down the stairs.
as he was tumbling down the stairs. Okay. You swung the bat and you hit the post intentionally, what you're telling us today, and broke the bat.
That's right.
Okay. Do you recall at an earlier event that you testified that you were startled by all of this?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about the phrase startled. What startled you about that?
That he was pushed down the stairs. It startled me that it was actually it was happening.
Okay. Is that why you broke the bat?
I was startled, and I didn't want to hit him.
Okay. And you're telling us that you didn't hit him? That
That's
you
right.
broke the bat intentionally?
Yes.
Okay.
I swung at the post intentionally. It broke.
When you struck the post and broke the bat, did Robert look your way?
No. He was
Okay.
looking in front of him at Deneen.
What was in front of him?
Deneen.
Deneen was in front of him with a hammer.
Beverly was yelling at Deneen to give her the hammer. She picked the hammer up.
Well, Beverly, you said, your testimony is that Beverly pushed Robert down the stairs.
Yeah,
In order to push him down the stairs, you have to be behind him.
that's right. He
So
come down
Beverly
the
was
stairs.
still-
Beverly come down behind him.
Let me ask the question, sir. I'll have time to answer. So Beverly was behind him. He's down on his knees on the floor, facing Deneen, who's got the hammer in her hand, correct?
She didn't have it in her hand at that point.
Where was it?
It was on the floor, I guess.
It was on the floor, you guess?
I don't know where the hammer was. I never saw the hammer until it was in Deneen's hand.
You weren't observing what Deneen was doing during this time?
She was looking at Robert. Robert had his arms kind of out.
Well, he was on his knees, so he's on his knees with his arms out?
Yes.
Okay. But he was able to see everything in front of him, correct?
Yes.
And he was able to see Deneen in front of him.
That's right.
And you're saying that she did not have the hammer during that period of time?
Not until Beverly told her to get the hammer.
Okay. So Robert just was on his knees and didn't do anything when Deneen got the hammer?
I didn't see him doing anything, just like he was struggling to get to her.
Okay. Let me come back to that. Do you remember saying once that Beverly never came down into the basement?
Probably.
That might have been when you were doing the interviews with the law enforcement?
Sounds like it's the first interview.
Okay. Let's talk about that first interview. Do you remember the detectives that talked to you on that first encounter? This has been back in 2018?
I remember him coming to the house.
I'm sorry?
I remember him coming to the house.
Okay. That would have been Detective Ivy?
Yes.
Okay.
Detective Moby.
Mr. Lloyd asked you that during the 3 interviews that you have with detectives, that your complicity, your involvement with the death of Robert all came out. Is that your testimony today? Is that you told them what happened?
Yes.
Okay, but you didn't tell them what happened on the first day that you interviewed with them, did you?
I didn't tell him all of it.
You didn't tell them everything?
No.
Okay. The conversation, and I'm not going to try to repeat verbatim because I wasn't there, but you were encouraged to get ahead of this thing, correct?
It was mentioned.
It was mentioned to, you have the opportunity to tell the story to get a deal, correct?
It was no deal. He said to help yourself out.
Help yourself out.
Not
Tell us
that
what happened.
You're going to get a deal.
Well, there was encouraging words that sometimes people do things that are bad and they want to correct it, right?
Yes.
And this is an opportunity to correct it. This is your chance to tell us what kind of happened.
Yes.
Get out in front of this thing and help yourself, right?
Yes.
Only after that did you actually begin to tell what else you say happened, correct?
Yes.
Okay. To get ahead of this and tell your side of the story.
Yes. He said he
Important
didn't
for
want.
you- It was important for you to establish the narrative of what happened to these officers, correct?
Yes.
So that you can craft the story the way that you want it to be crafted.
Well, no. They wanted my side of the story
They wanted your side of the story,
and said they didn't want that. I didn't want them telling my side of the story.
correct? So, your story, right?
That's what happened.
That's the story that you told them, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you had testified that Deneen did in fact hit Robert with the hammer, correct?
Yes.
Deneen was left-handed or right-handed?
Right-handed.
Right-handed. So Robert's facing her, she swings the hammer right-handed, correct?
Yes.
Hits him on the left side of the skull.
Yes.
Hits him several times.
Twice.
Twice. Okay, fair. Hits him twice. Okay. Now, your testimony was at some point in time, my client got the hammer and hit Robert, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How was Beverly able to get by Robert, who was down at the bottom of the stairs?
She grabbed. He was on his knees. She grabbed the hammer out of. Beverly grabbed the hammer out of Deneen's hand.
Okay. What type of physical relationship we're talking about here? I mean, Robert's here, Deneen's out in front of him hitting the hammer. So you're saying that Beverly reached over Robert to get the hammer?
Right at the top of him.
Okay. Did Deneen toss the hammer to her?
No,
How
she
did it
just
come to
let
her?
go of it.
Sorry?
She just let go of it. Didn't even let go of the hammer whenever Beverly grabbed it.
Okay. Where do you remember Beverly hitting Robert with the hammer?
On the left side of the head.
On the left side of the head? The
Yes.
back of the head or the front of the head?
Side of the head through here.
Okay. But Beverly's behind him?
Yes.
Okay. Was this with the claw part or with the mallet part?
The round part.
The round part, the mallet part? Okay. You said, testified earlier that you never remembered seeing that hammer before, correct?
That's right.
Prior to that date?
Right.
Okay. And so you have no idea how it got down to the basement?
No.
Okay. And if I recall correctly, using hammer was not part of the quote plan.
That's right.
Okay. What about the rope? Tell us about the rope. Where did the rope come from?
It was down there with the bag.
Okay. Had you seen that rope down there before?
Yes.
Okay. So the rope had been down, something down the basement that you'd seen before?
Yes.
Now the grocery bag, I believe this was a Walgreens bag or something such as that. It's a
Yeah, just a plastic bag.
normal type
Yeah.
of plastic bag you would get if you went to a store, bought something and put into the bag.
Yes.
Okay. So these thin, regular plastic bag, not a trash bag, correct?
Right.
Do you recall Deneen trying to find a regular trash bag at some point in time that day?
No.
There was never a discussion about needing to get some type of bag to wrap Robert up in?
No.
And your testimony today is that while all of this was going on during the day, the children were not at home.
That's right.
Okay. So, at what point in time was Robert's body removed from the house?
It was after dark.
It was after dark of the same day?
Yes.
Okay. Again, back to the planning that was going on here, the trunk was not part of the planning on that 7 days before, correct?
The trunk was never, it was mentioned that the trunk by the bed had memorabilia in it and it had to be emptied out.
Okay. Who brought the trunk down into the basement?
Beverly.
Now, I know how tall my client is and what shape she was in at the point in time. How tall was Deneen, do you recall?
I don't know.
5'3", 5'4"?
I don't know.
How tall are you?
5'11",
5'11"? Okay. And how much did you weigh back then?
180.
180? And was Robert's body put into the trunk in the basement?
Yes.
Okay. And then the trunk was carried upstairs by you?
And Deneen.
I'm sorry?
Deneen and myself.
Okay. So Deneen and yourself took the trunk with the body upstairs?
Yes.
Okay. And did you immediately go to the van and put the trunk in the van?
Yes.
Okay. Did you put it in the back of the van?
Yes.
The very back of the van?
Yeah, where the back seat was up between the hatch and the back seat.
Okay, so it's like there's not a lot of space there,
Right.
so that was where the trunk was placed?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point in time, did you and Deneen go and get the kids?
I'm not sure if Deneen went with me to get the kids or not.
Okay. Could you have gone and gotten the kids yourself?
Yes.
And you put them in the van?
Yes.
Where'd you put the kids?
You mean from school?
No. I'm talking when you transported, after you put the trunk in the van
At night.
at night,
Okay.
The kids were loaded up in the van,
Yes, they were put on the back seat.
in the back seat.
Yes,
They weren't put in the rear of the van.
when you open the back of the van, you see in the back of the seat, there's a space in there. The
Correct.
body was in there, the gas can was there. You shut the back hatch. You go around to the sliding door, come in there, then the back seat is there. That's where the girls were put.
Okay. And so Beverly was sitting next to the kids?
She was sitting in the middle row.
Okay. So there was a back seat, the kids, middle row with Beverly.
Yes,
Deneen was driving.
yes,
Do you recall one of the times you talked to the detectives early on, you couldn't remember who was driving?
yes,
Okay. It could have been you, it could have been Deneen, could have been Beverly. You didn't
yes,
remember?
that sounds familiar.
Okay. Is your testimony today, though, that it was not Beverly driving, it was Deneen driving?
That's right.
Make sure we're very clear about that.
Yes,
And is your testimony today that Beverly put the bag on Robert?
I'm not sure if Beverly put the bag on him or not. I turned around with the hammer. I had the hammer in my hand. I turned back around. The bag was on his head, and Deneen was holding the rope.
Okay. And the rope was on the outside of the bag?
Yes,
Okay. So your testimony today is that in driving over to Ottawa County, you had no idea where you were going.
that's right.
You never had been there before?
No,
Okay. Now, your testimony also today was that the plan was to light the body on fire once you got there, correct?
yes,
Did you know where you were going to when you left Charlotte?
no.
Okay. You recall how long it took you to drive to the location where the,
Not exactly.
okay. What time of the day or night was this?
It was late at night.
Was it dark outside?
Yes,
Okay.
it was sunrise whenever we were getting back to the house.
Okay. Now, you testified that you came to a gate, and backed up to the gate was locked.
That's right.
You couldn't get through, you could not unlock the gate to get through there.
That's right.
So you moved the trunk underneath the gate, and then moved the trunk then further into the wooded area.
Yes,
How far away from the gate did you go?
it was 11 paces in, or 21 paces in and 11 paces to the side.
21 paces in,
It's like 105, 110 feet.
okay. Did you decide where the location was going to be when the body was set on fire?
No, we just stopped.
Was Deneen telling you where to go?
We just drug him a little ways and stopped, and then drug him a little ways out to the side. It wasn't like it. This is. I mean, it wasn't discussed how far to put him in there.
Okay. But it was just you and Deneen moving the trunk out in that spot?
Yes.
Okay. And was it your decision to light him on fire?
No, that was already planned. Beverly planned that.
Okay. But Beverly was not there to actually do the lighting of the body on fire, correct?
Not yet.
Sorry?
Not yet.
Okay. But he was doused with gasoline that you got from someplace?
Yes.
Was the gasoline purchased on the way to that location?
Before we got on the highway, we stopped at a gas station by the highway in Charlotte. Put gas in the van, put gas in the can.
Okay, so your testimony is, after you got the kids in the van, y'all got in the van, and you took off, you stopped after that point in time to get gas?
Yes.
Okay. So when the body was actually set on fire, Who actually lit the flame?
I did.
You did. Okay. You did that with a match,
The lighter.
cigarette lighter,
Yes.
a big lighter,
Yeah.
or a Zippo?
It was a big lighter.
Big lighter. Okay. You had to get pretty close to that.
Had to pour a trail out.
Okay. And who else was standing there when this took place?
Beverly.
Where was Deneen?
Deneen was back at the van.
Okay. Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in driving back from the location to Charlotte, who was driving?
Deneen.
Deneen was drove all the way back?
Yep.
Okay. Now, under sometime during the 3 interviews you did with the detectives, and I don't remember what was under direct or previous testimony, you made a statement about this is the first time that you talked to anyone about this. Is that correct?
Yes.
That was in 2018.
Yes.
That's not true, is it?
Yes, it is.
Do you remember talking to Monica Smith?
No.
Did you remember talking to Beth Bailey?
You mean Sarah Bailey?
Sarah Bailey, sorry.
No.
You don't remember talking to them at all?
Nope. Not about this.
Not about this.
Nope.
So those 2 individuals, would I have any idea what happened here?
I did a lot of drugs back then. I mean, I
So
don't
you
remember
may have
telling
said
them
something?
anything. What's that?
What type of drugs were you doing back then? You said you marijuana and cocaine.
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this point. Neither witness is on his witness list. So any information that he would be talking about or testifying to at this particular moment would be information that would not actually be coming into this courtroom today.
Mr. Davis?
I believe that if his memory was jogged sufficiently, he might remember the conversations that he had with these people, which would correct his earlier testimony. That's simply put. If he's saying that he was on drugs and doesn't remember, that's all he needs to tell me.
And that's what he said.
Okay. Now, the testimony is that after this took place, did you go back to living at the Horatio Street address?
Yes.
Okay. And you helped clean up the crime scene down in the basement?
I helped paint over the posts, and I helped put the concrete patch down.
Okay. Did you help with the concrete patching or not?
I mixed it up and poured it out of the bucket. Deneen molded it, shaped it in there.
How long did you stay at that Horatio Street address?
Till mid-July.
Okay. This is 2002. I thought you went to Jamaica earlier than that.
No, it was mid-July.
Do you recall a previous testimony where you said you went to Jamaica from May to July of 2002?
From May until July. We went in July.
Okay. You got me
I stayed
confused.
at the residence from May until July, and then went to Jamaica in July.
Okay, so you didn't go to Jamaica in May.
No,
That's your testimony today. You didn't go to Jamaica in May.
right.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. If he can't provide an actual document, then he can't just say that's your testimony today, because he's never actually said that he's gone to Jamaica in May.
I'm just asking a question.
But
Okay, please. Is your objection improper impeachment?
it is, Your Honor.
Mr. Davis, respond.
I'll withdraw the question.
Questions withdrawn. Go ahead.
How long did you spend in Jamaica?
A month.
A month. How did you get there?
Flew.
Okay. Did you pay for the trip yourself?
Yes.
Okay. And the purpose of the trip was vacation?
Well, that's what we're telling people.
Okay. You spent time with Deneen while you were down there?
No, she didn't go.
She didn't go. You spent time with Beverly when you were down there?
Yes. She was meeting a guy that she has known for like 20 years. His name was
Sorry?
Ronnie.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
She was meeting up with a guy named Ronnie that
Okay.
she had known for like 20 years.
Okay.
So we were there for like 3 days, and this tall Jamaican dude comes up. He's got dreads, really big dreads past his knees. He sold me a pound of weed for $20.
Okay, all right. When you returned from Jamaica, did you return to Charlotte?
For about a week.
And then you moved to Texas?
I was in Charlotte running around with Beverly, took her to the airport. I hung around in Battle Creek for about a week, in between there and Bellevue, and then I went down south
Okay. And you stayed there until sometime
in 2007.
you moved to Grand Rapids?
Yes.
Was there a discussion, and I don't recall under direct, but do you recall any use of gloves during this incident?
When we were cleaning up,
When you're cleaning up? You didn't have any gloves on prior to this?
no,
Okay, you didn't have a glove on when you were holding the bat, for instance?
no,
Do you recall putting the bat in the trunk?
no. I didn't do any of that.
Do you know how the bat got in the trunk?
Beverly or Deneen put it in there.
Okay. You're saying you didn't do it?
I didn't do it.
So you didn't have any gloves on when your testimony earlier was that you removed the hammer from Robert's head, correct?
That's right.
You weren't wearing gloves when you did that?
No. I was wearing gloves when we were dragging the body out.
Now, from the time that you arrived back in the States from Jamaica, did you ever have any occasion to speak with Deneen again?
I talked to her one time,
One time. Do you remember what year that was?
2003, 2004.
2003? Okay. Where were you living during that period of time?
I was living at home in East Texas
In East
with my
Texas?
mom.
Okay. And did you ever have an occasion to speak with Beverly after that period of time?
No.
Nothing further.
Redirect, Mr. Lloyd.
You, Your Honor, thank you. You mentioned this gate that you went to, and we looked at the picture of the two-track. You said that there was a chain and a lock on it.
Yes.
Do you know if it was actually locked, or do you just know that there was a chain and a lock on it, and you felt you had to go underneath it?
I didn't check it to see if it was locked. I saw the lock in the chain, and
Just assume that it was locked?
yes.
Then you can go back to the other picture. Now, Mr. McMillan, we previously talked about People's Exhibit 8, correct?
Yes.
Now, you had been told twice about killing Robert. We agree on that, right?
Yes.
After that second time in the basement, did you try to stay out of the basement at all?
I didn't go down there for 3 days.
Why not?
I didn't want to be in there
Why?
because I didn't want to do this.
Then why'd you end up there on that day?
Robert wasn't home.
Because Robert wasn't home, so it was okay to smoke in the basement.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about These are the stairs, this white area coming in a diagonal shape, is that right?
Yes.
This board is here, it's white,
Yes.
goes across horizontally, and there's a second board, is that fair to say?
Yes.
This brown stuff underneath it, you said wasn't there in 2002,
That's
correct?
right.
So did that leave an ample amount of room to actually be able to see up the stairs?
If you got in the right angle, you could see up them stairs.
So on that day when Robert came down to the basement, you were in a position that you could actually see him.
Yes.
You were in a position to actually see the defendant push him down the stairs.
Yes.
Now this is the area at the bottom of the stairs.
Yes.
And this is the area that you said Robert fell.
Yes.
And then came towards Deneen, who was at the bottom of this picture. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So there was plenty of room for Beverly, the defendant, to walk down behind.
Yes.
Plenty of room for her to take her left hand and strike the left side of Robert's head.
Yes.
And that's what you say happened, is that right?
Yes.
That would have been nasty.
That's why I moved my bag.
Now, you were asked how Robert acted when he was alive at the house. You remember that?
Yes.
Was Robert violent? Was Robert abusive?
He was stern.
How was the defendant?
Drunk.
Drunk. What do you mean by
Lied.
drunk?
She drank every day.
And what happened when she drank?
She would start talking in another language and crying.
So she had mascara running all the time.
Yes.
Was she also doing drugs?
Yes. I was doing drugs with her.
And you were doing drugs with her. And do you remember that first conversation that you had with the detectives? It was a train wreck, right?
Yeah.
But do you remember that in that first conversation you actually said, I remember Beverly hitting Robert in the head with a hammer?
Yes.
Now, Mr. McMillan, you said that you didn't want to be in that basement, but you ended up being there.
Yes.
You swung the bat at Robert.
Yes.
A hammer was put in his head.
Yes.
He was struck by both Deneen and the defendant.
Yes.
A bag was put over his head and a rope was put around his neck. Those are things that you've looked at this morning, is that right?
Yes.
And after that happened, who is the person who is directing you and Deneen to do everything in regards to how to kill and get rid of Robert?
Beverly. She watched a lot of crime shows.
And from those crime shows, do you believe that's how she had the idea to come up with what y'all did?
Yes.
And it was accomplished.
Yes.
Once again, so I'm clear, when you say the word Beverly, you're talking about the person that you've identified here today. Is that correct?
Yes.
And let's be fair, you don't look the same way that you did in 2002, do you?
No.
That picture that you had up there shows you with a little shorter hair.
Yes.
When you saw Deneen last, she probably didn't look the same as you saw her in 2002. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say.
And as you look at the defendant today, does she look the same as she looked in 2002?
No.
Everyone looked different. But would you agree with me, everyone seemed to have the strength to be able to carry out this murder and then carry away Robert's body and light him on fire?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Is the defendant excused? Defendant, excuse me, is the witness excused?
It is by the people, Your Honor.
Is the witness excused, Mr. Havis?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Excuse meaning released at this time.
Yes, he is released, right, Mr. Havis?
Yes.
He is released, thank you.